Good.
Is it Mike?
Lydia's we're live.
Okay. Da 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 da. We heard the door. Okay. I would like to call to order the January 16th regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Phelps-Clifton Springs School District. Pam, would you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call.
Lynn Liebrecht, board member.
Lindsay Burrito, board member.
Mike Turner, board member.
Heather Rockefeller, board member.
Deb Gallagher, board member.
Amber Wilkes, board member.
Carl Dubash, business administrator.
Nick Ganster, superintendent.
Tracy Altman, board member.
Pamela Mann, district clerk.
Okay, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the agenda as presented, state aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. All right, consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the consent agenda items as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed? Motion carried. All right, we're on to presentations, and this presentation is being postponed? Correct? Okay, so we will skip over that, and we're on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so I have a number of things to talk to the board about this evening. First and foremost, I think we should welcome Pam to the table. We're glad to have a district clerk, and of course, in the district office, we're very happy to have our clerical team fully staffed, so welcome, Pam. So I just wanted to talk for a couple minutes about the capital project. I talked to Ryan Tilburg earlier today. It's actually a pretty exciting time with the capital project. The high school band room is, I'm going to hold back on saying nearing completion, but we are getting pretty darn close, having that space look close to usable. The first notable thing that the community will see when they're in the building is there's currently a temporary wall in that corridor. That temporary wall will come down, and when it does come down, part of the footprint of the old cafeteria there has been changed, so it recesses right there now. So that's going to create almost like a lobby feeling, a lounge type feeling. And I learned just last week when I said, hey, you know, that might be a really nice thing for the Black Box Theater to have a nice little lobby there. And then someone was like, oh yeah, there's going to be this place where they can run concessions out of the band room, one of the practice rooms. And I was like, okay, so this was very well thought out. So yeah, so we're going to have that feeling, right, when that wall comes down. And when that happens, the ceiling tiles and all the ceiling work in that area and all the finishing of that lounge area will commence, in addition to the remainder of the work on the inside of the band classroom will also continue and be complete soon. I'm going to hold back on a specific date because you know how construction goes, but it's looking good. And with that said, I should point out that before the holiday break, I let the board know that Amy Connor and her high school choir students would be going to the new choir room, and that has happened. So now we have another brand new music classroom being used by teachers and students. And what that means is the general music classroom that was the temporary space for her and her students is now being finished off with the right fixtures to have all of the general music equipment moved into the space. So we're progressing there as well. So I do want to switch gears just a little bit and let you know that we had a facility committee meeting last week, and we are beginning those conversations for the next capital project. And I think right now the only sort of dates and maybe even estimated dates that I would be comfortable sharing publicly would just be the general expected calendar for that project. We're looking at having all of the work and idea phase completed this calendar year with a vote out in the community for the next project in December. So we're about 11 months from that. From there, we have to design and do all the submittals to the state ed department, and that will take about, we're about a year from that, and that phase does last about 18 months. So the design and submittal phase is a very long part of the process. And then after that, we go into what's called the bidding phase, where we have all of the jobs that we're going to do. We know what it's going to take. We know how much money it's going to cost. And we go out to bid with contractors. So we are about 2.5 years out from that. And then after that is the actual construction and project completion. And we're looking at about 2.75 years before we would actually break ground on this project. And with completion in about 4 years, right? And then I can't help but say this is based on our financial guidance and the way that these contracts and all the debt service and state aid works, our advisors at Fiscal Advisors advise us to stay on about a 5-year cycle for a project, and that keeps that stream of debt and state aid cycling appropriately and keeps things nice and even for the community in terms of any tax levy increases that we may have off any number of years. So 5-year cycle means we would be looking at the next project in 2029. So just want to have that out there at the beginning of this next project. All right, so that is where we are with construction in the district. Digital equity survey. So one of the practices that rolled out during the pandemic was going out to communities and just assessing the degree to which our families are connected to the internet and have access to the internet both at school and at home, because that lets us forecast what type of purchasing we might need to do in order to make sure that we can come as close as humanly possible to achieving digital equity for our students in our community. So that being said, we still continue in that process, but the reason I'm bringing it up, because it is not that exciting of a survey, is that we are going to be rolling this survey out through Parent Square. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because now we are turning more functionality on within Parent Square. So Parent Square has a forms feature, so we're building this survey out in that forms feature, and then it will be sent out to our parents and guardians via Parent Square. Now that might seem like a small little change, but it's actually pretty important, because parents and guardians have to authenticate or log into Parent Square in order to access the survey, which means that increases the validity of the data we collect, and it protects the privacy of the information we collect. So we're pretty happy that we're going to be able to do that through forms, and it's our first go at using a form through Parent Square, so we hope to use that feature more in the future. And I can't help myself but say the next feature that we're expecting to take a look at is what's called Student Square, which really is the student interface of Parent Square, and it allows students to speak with one another and speak with teachers and staff members in a secure and monitored space. So we're going to be working on that next with Parent Square. All right. So normally I wouldn't do this, but I feel compelled to recognize the fact that we have 4 mid-year retirees. We always recognize our retirees in June, and we will have that formal recognition in June at a board meeting. But we have Stephanie Hasseltine, who retired back in November, kindergarten teacher. Steve Corey, one of our 6th grade teachers, served his last day in December. He's now retired. Cheryl Brownell, high school main office secretary. Her last day is coming up very, very soon. Or did it already happen?
January 2nd.
Oh, it was January 2nd. My apologies. And then we have one of our longtime bus drivers just made the decision to retire, Rick Eldridge. So we're happy for all of our retirees, and I just wanted to point them folks out because I didn't want to let that just linger out there until June. So, all right. And then last but not least on my topics, recently the state ed department did release 3 through 8 ELA and math data, And along with that, they publicly released districts' accountability statuses. Now, what they do is they go through and they give each building a status, and then they give the district a status as well. And I want to be sure that I'm saying this correctly. The best status you can have is what is called LSI, which stands for Local Support and Improvement. And that's formerly in good standing, all right? So they mean the same thing. And the sort of feeling behind the local support and improvement means, you guys got this, keep improving locally, we're gonna stay hands-off, right? So at our secondary school, we have a subgroup because the state identifies all subgroups that you may have, and these are demographic subgroups. So subgroups by socioeconomic status, subgroups by race, subgroups by students with disabilities, and things like that. And there's a whole slew of subgroups that a district could be identified in. And you can also be identified as an all students group, meaning every single student in your district or school. So at the secondary school, we have been designated as what's called a targeted support and improvement school for 7th and 8th grade ELA and math for students with disabilities. So what that means is in that particular scenario, we have some work to do, okay? Now, in addition to that, there is another designation called LSI, Local Support and Improvement, PT, which stands for Potentially Targeted. So what that means is the state looked at our data and said, maybe next year, we're gonna target you. So that's a little ominous for us in terms of being identified by the state and then having to perhaps entertain visitors from the state and have them tell us how we can improve, right? So what we want to do is we want to stay an LSI in every way, shape, or form in every building. And what that means is we have to pay close attention to those state tests. And that's whether you agree with the test or whether you disagree with the test, because the fact remains is the state will use that information to judge us, right? So we may not like them, but we have to respect them, right? In terms of the accountability that can come of those tests. So Mr. Hamelink has done a ton of work along with our building principals and other building level administrators and our teachers to take a look at, wow, so much. There's so much to unpack, and I don't want to go too deeply, but take a look at the most common assessed items, taking a look at the standards that those represent, and then developing brief benchmark assessments in each grade level in 3 through 8 in math and English in order for us to dipstick our students' progress over the next few months leading up to those state tests. And I have to be really clear is we are not putting students through full practice tests. These are strategically selected standards and test items that will reveal a lot. So we call them high leverage standards. They're gonna reveal a lot about that child's progress to being able to demonstrate their learning on that state test. So we're rolling that out. We're going to have 3 over the course of this spring for each grade level. And like I said, they're brief. And the expectation is that our students will also be receiving critical feedback on their performance because that's where the growth and the learning happens, right? So that's where we are in terms of accountability with the state. And I left that item to the end because I did want to provide the board with an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have related to those accountability designations from New York State.
Any questions?
So,
Your microphone.
so we have been designated in one area,
One subgroup at one building.
right?
And we have some potential target areas in both buildings based on the results of the next
Okay.
test administration.
Anything else?
This will be an ongoing topic of discussion as we move through this spring, and should be each year, right? To stay informed where we are and our efforts to remain an LSI school. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to board discussion. So committee reports, Nick shared a little bit about our facilities committee that's met since our last meeting. Lynn, do you have an update on
Legislative.
legislative?
I do. So we met this past weekend to kind of just finalize things for the position paper for the state. Lobby Day is February 7th. We're going to be well represented, so that's great. We just kind of had hit some of the key points, just tried to kind of, I guess, kind of more finalize the bullet points that we really wanted to cover. So we're still going to be focusing on the equity and predictability in funding. Within that, hopefully, encouraging the state to work on updating the formula, timely, reliable distribution of funds to schools. We're also going to continue to advocate for mental health services, so incentives to partner with community human service agencies and just making sure that kids have kind of the services that they need in school. Staff recruitment and retention. With that, hopefully updating some of the civil service laws that can kind of be a little bit of a barrier sometimes. So taking a look at, giving more flexibility to districts and BOCES to kind of construct job descriptions and things like that within that. And then electric buses. We know that mandate is coming up soon. There's just kind of lots of concerns across the board with that, just being ready, funding, kind of, a lot of districts, especially in our area, being able to kind of handle that transition. So just advocating in regards to that as well.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think you all have, Pam did get printed paper out for all of us about the lobby day, so I'm glad to hear that we're going to be well represented, but certainly if anybody wants to join the bus, I assume it's a bus going again, right? Yeah, then let Pam know and she'll get you signed up. Okay. Thanks, Lynn. Any other, audit committee? Anything you want to report? Or
I can give an update on behalf of the audit committee. One of the key things we discussed that has changed for Phelps-Clifton Springs is that with our enrollment dropping under 1,500 students, we're no longer required to do an internal audit each year and submit that audit to SED. We're still required to do our regulatory audit, which is an audit that every school district is required to do each October. By October, the audit has to be complete and then sent to the state education department. So with our recent Beds Day numbers being 1484, SED no longer requires us to complete this audit. What we've noticed over the last couple of years is that the auditor's recommendations have grown fewer and fewer. And in our conversations with the auditor, even he felt that the internal audit on a yearly basis is not revealing anything new or anything that's overly surprising. So we can determine on a yearly basis if we choose to conduct that audit, but we are certainly not required to. We're going to push that audit off for at least another year, and the audit committee is going to reconvene around this time next year to determine if there were any significant findings from the regulatory audit. And then if we want to take a deeper dive, we may ask the internal auditor to conduct either a full-blown internal audit or a focus area audit on a specific department or process. So that's where we are right now.
okay. So, and it's always dependent on our Beds Day enrollment?
It is always, Beds Day enrollment is the key figure, is the key metric that's reported to New York State, and that's what the state uses as one of the metrics. The moment you fall under 1,500, you're no longer required to do that, so that's the number they use.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So as for this year, many of our department directors and our central business office staff will be pleased to know that we've already been through 3 audits, and we had a 4th one coming up, but we're just going to take our foot off the gas ever so slightly because, we're not required to do that. So it's going to be some welcome breathing room
Good.
for this year.
So just for clarification, on the website, enrollment does say over 1,500, but that's because it includes pre-K, correct?
Yes, that is
Okay.
because it includes pre-K. Yep.
Good to know. Okay, and beds doesn't include PK. Makes sense. Okay, thank you. The other thing I have is the other piece that Pam printed for everybody is the professional development from 4 County. If you would like to go to this, this is how we always used to do our meetings. If you would like to attend, I think it'll be a good one to attend. And just let Pam know if you would like to go. I know I'm planning to go. So I'd welcome anybody who wants to join me. All right, anything else anybody has? No? All right, moving on. So public comment. The Board of Education values the input, excuse me, of the Mid-Lakes community and welcomes public comment on any topic related to board work, with the exception of matters pertaining to individual personnel and/or students. All public comments must include appropriate language and observe proper decorum. Anyone making public comment must identify themselves by name and address. The public comment period will be limited to a total of 30 minutes and 1 comment per person. Individual comments will be limited to 2 minutes. The board does not respond to items presented or questions raised through public comment. However, the board may discuss topics of public comment at a later time and/or contact the individual who submitted the comment. No public comments tonight. Thank you. All right, on to new business. So, policy manual modifications. Do you want to speak to those a little bit?
Sure. All right. So this is your monthly deep dive into our policy manual. I am glad that this is becoming routine. So here we go. Still going with the winter theme. It feels actually relevant at this point. So those are our members. Our last meeting was on the 8th, and our next meeting is on February 5th. And we're going to do some first reads, we're going to do some second reads, and we're going to do some policy adoptions tonight. So the first reads will be the workplace violence prevention policy. Our second reads will be policy 3421, which is the Title IX and sex discrimination policy that we had a first read on last time. And the complementing policy, policy 3420, which rounds out our non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district set of policies. All right, and then our actual approvals and adoptions will be the policies that I refer to as our animal policies. Those are the service animals and then the general policy that the school board has for animals on campus after hours, right, for our community. All right, so let's take a look. Here we go. So policy 6190, this is a brand new policy for us. And the reason this is before you tonight is because it's the law. It started back in 2006, labor law section 27B. And what that law outlines is an obligation for all public employers, and I forget the exact number of employees, whether it's 20 or 30, but 20. If you have more than 20 employees, you have to abide by labor law section 27B. Now, you may ask, if this was in place in 2006 and we have over 20 employees, why we haven't done it yet? When it was originally written, school districts were exempt. That exemption evaporated in the last revision. So now school districts are accountable to labor law section 27B. So here's what we have to do. We have to establish a policy. We have to work with a designated employee leader, and those will be our collective bargaining presidents. We have 4 of them. We're going to work with those folks. We have to conduct a workplace violence risk assessment, and we also have to have a workplace violence prevention plan. So that work starts tonight with the first read in this policy, and by May, we have to have it fully implemented. So we will follow our normal process for having our policies approved, first read, second read, and adoption. And while that's happening, because this policy is more or less boilerplate, this is a policy that's been vetted by Erie One BOCES in their policy service, and this is the policy that every district that I've talked to superintendents, any district they're in, this is the policy that they're adopting verbatim. And the policy includes an overview of the workplace violence prevention policy itself. It has definitions of key terms. It has a description of what workplace violence is, articulates prohibited conduct by employees and any visitor or community member that may be here on campus. It articulates how we have to have our workplace violence prevention advisory committee. That would be some school district employees with the collective bargaining leaders, which I talked about a moment ago. How to report incidents of workplace violence. How an inspection from the commissioner or the Department of Labor could take place, whether it's surprise or whether it's solicited by somebody. How we have to conduct a workplace risk evaluation and develop that workplace violence prevention program. And then a general statement about prohibition of any retaliatory behavior, commonly known as a whistleblower clause. So if somebody brings something forward, they can't be retaliated against. And then our obligations for training and notifying our employees of this program. So the policy is less in-depth than our last first reads. So just take some time between now and the next meeting to review that policy and come with any questions for the second read. And we'll go from there. All right? Okay, so our second reads, policy 3421, that's Title IX and sex discrimination, and policy 3420, non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district. These are being pushed because policy 3421 takes in the August 14th of 2020 updates to the 1972 Education Amendments Act, which establishes Title IX. And there were a number of updates that we had to comply with within this policy. And this policy, if I escape here, we can go over here and let me just find the right one. There we go. So 3421 provides an overview of Title IX, the scope and the application of the policy, what constitutes sex discrimination, including sexual harassment. And that was the big overt update in 2020, is that sexual harassment was implied in the original 1972 law, but was never specifically included. So the big update was that the sexual harassment piece was explicitly now included in that Educational Amendments Act. It establishes who our Title IX coordinators are, provides their contact information, how to report allegations if this were to happen in the district, articulates the process for investigating the grievance, articulates the process of how many days you have to reply to those grievances, how you can come to an informal resolution, what to do if one party has questions and needs answers, and all the timeframes associated with that. It's very detailed, and we followed suit with, the policy committee followed suit with other districts who have already adopted this policy. So the timeframes included are consistent with our neighbors. So that's 3421. 3420 complements this one because the Title IX policy only includes sex discrimination and sexual harassment. Policy 3420, the non-discrimination and anti-harassment, includes any discrimination or harassment that could be as a result of any other demographic that you might be. It expressly lists race, color, religion, disability, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, military status, sex, age, and marital status, but that is not an all-exhaustive list. There could be other groups that could be discriminated against that aren't included overtly. And it also articulates, not to the same extent, the details of a process that could be followed, because the subject of the non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district is not held to the same standard as the Title IX Education Law Act of 1972. So it requires less specificity, so it has less specificity, if that makes sense. So Any questions on those two policies, because those are our second reads on those policies, and I don't want to skip over that and glaze over an opportunity for the board to ask any questions. Okay. Next, we have, oh, I got to get back to here. All right. We're going to skip right to this one. So today, I'm going to ask that recommend that the board adopt these two policies, 3220 and 3221, the use of the assistance animals and animals on school grounds. I'm not going to put you through yet another read of those because we've done our two reads, but I will provide an opportunity for you all to ask any questions if you have them. Good. All right, so that does it for policy updates. And I don't have, the policy committee did not completely settle on which policies will be coming next. So our first reads in February are TBD. All right?
The anticipation.
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to approve the policy readings and modifications as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, district appointments, item B, a new business. Is there a motion to approve the district appointment for the 2023-24 school year as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item B under new business, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. You are now official records access officer. All right, if nobody objects, I'd like to block items C, D, and E, contracts, agreements, corrected tax roll, and election services agreement. Is there a motion to approve items C, D, and E as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items C, D, and E as presented, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. All right, item F, the budget transfer. Is there a motion to approve the budget transfer as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the budget transfer as presented, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. Item G, contract. Is there a motion to approve the contract as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And item H, the substitute salaries. Is there a motion to approve the amended substitute salaries for the 23-24 school year?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the amended substitute salaries for the 23-24 school year, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And finally, item I, Mid-Lakes fundraisers. Is there a motion to approve the two fundraisers as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All of those, or any discussion? All those in favor of the fundraisers as presented, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. Moving right along. All right, on to personnel items. If no one objects, I'd like to block items A through D. They're all appointments. Is there a motion to approve items A through D as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items A through D as presented, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. And items E and F, some retirements. Is there a motion to approve items E and F as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items E and F as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. On to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting for the purpose of entering into executive session for the purpose of discussing matters leading to the employment or promotion of a particular person and contract negotiations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. We are adjourned.